So my name is Kate Markey. I work at the QIMR Berghofer Medical Research Institute in Brisbane in Australia. This is my first time visiting Pittsburgh and first time actually attending the AAI meeting.
And I'm Kelli MacDonald. I also work at the QIMR Berghofer Institute. I'm an immunologist. My initial training was in neuroscience, where I did my Ph.D., but my first postdoc, I moved into immunology and was hooked. My research focuses on predominantly antigen presentation, but also the effects on T-cell and T-cell differentiation in the setting of graft versus host disease.
And I was one of Kelli's first graduate students, actually, and I started in the lab a number of years ago, and she got me started in immunology and antigen presentation and that kind of work, and also started me running and got me on that track as well. And here at the Pittsburgh AAI meeting, the meeting actually conflicted with the marathon weekend, so yesterday morning we went out for a run, as well as me having to give my talk yesterday afternoon. So it's been a really, really nice meeting, and we've been able to do some of the fun stuff as well.
It can be a long time when you first discover something and you're excited about it, but for me it's mostly in the mouse. And at this stage in my career, we've got really close collaborations with the clinic, and there's been several of our findings within the last 10 years that are now actually in the clinic, and that includes an understanding how GCSF mobilization works and understanding when it might be appropriate to use that drug post-transplant, but also more recently in clinical transplants in cytokine inhibition, and it looks like it has some really good efficacy. And so it's really nice to see things move from our basic studies in the mice into the clinic, and know that patients are going to improve because of it.
Yeah, so I think one of the really interesting and nice things about this meeting is that there's a lot of basic science, there's a lot of pure immunology here, where people really focus on why and looking really closely at mechanisms. And then there's also work that is further down this end of the spectrum, looking at more applied work, or more things that are direct, that have a direct clinical translation, and our work does lean towards that end, but it's really nice to be exposed to some of the more basic biology things that are at this meeting as well. So that's been really good, and it's also been nice that over many years in the lab we've been able to do some things that have started down at the basic science proof of principle end, and have now progressed through to the more clinically translatable end of things.
My aha moment was probably in grade 10 biology. I had a very enthusiastic biology teacher who I think the particular interest was in when we were talking about genetic-based diseases, and described phenylketonuria, and I remember that specifically, and saying that, once they discovered it, they knew that they could just control the diet, and then the outcome was so much better, and I thought that's what I want to do, change the outcome.
It's really important that we come to conferences, get out of our daily lives. We get very, very, very focused on a very small area of biology sometimes, when we're just working on our own projects, and come to meetings and you get the chance to have see a completely different perspective and completely different way of working. And you also, we stand up and you have a presentation and you get asked a question that is, the person asking is giving you their opinion on the work, and it's often we feel like some of those questions will be completely left field, but that's because we get very focused on our particular way of looking at things. So it's really nice to talk to people in different ways. And often at a meeting like this, we do transplant immunology, and then it's not just transplant in the solid organ sense, it's bone marrow transplant immunology, so it's sort of a subset of that. And one of the other things about coming to these meetings is that you meet people over drinks or whatever, and you're forced to really distill your project work you're forced to communicate really clearly and talk about what you're doing and why it's important, and sometimes that in itself can also be a really important part of coming to the meetings and talking to people and getting their perspective on things. So, I don't know.
Well, particularly for me, it's been really instrumental coming to meetings in the US, because a lot of our collaborators now are based in the US. And while I can read, in Australia, we're quite isolated. We're far away, so while I can read finished stories in the journals, it's only when I come to these meetings I see what people are doing. Australia has a very strong immunology field, transplantation and bone marrow transplantation in particular less so. So coming to these meetings really allows us to see what's new in the field, and also allows us to see who's doing stuff that's very, very close to what we're doing, and it sort of forms when we go back, how we're going to focus our research. And having to take a 14-hour flight to go back, we're not going to do it every week, and I think there's a real advantage having a very wide immunology community in the US, and with a lot of smaller meetings and interactions. We really only get that being based in Australia when we come over and talk to people here. So both attending the seminars, which are great, but also meeting people and networking is really important.